Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Adbri Unlock the Hidden Value of Your Home webinar. Very shortly, I'll introduce our special guest speaker, whom you'll be able to see on screen now, Jason. But just a little bit of housekeeping while we wait for official kickoff time. Jason and I will be on screen. The chat will be open for everybody to participate in the conversation, and we'd love to get to some of your questions during the course of the session today. So please feel free to utilize that. We have a couple of Adbri team members, Cara and Carolina, who will also be watching the chat to provide any commentary, initial responses, and also to seek some of those questions that we can come back to at the end to try and get all of the queries to help you unlock the hidden value of your backyard in projects over the coming months. We're getting right on time, so we'll get ready. I think one thing that I'd just like to add as well is we do actually have, courtesy of Adbri Masonry, 5 Visa gift cards valued at $100 each to be able to draw today. And my colleagues Carolina and Cara will be helping us with that. So stay tuned for the end of the session and we'll organise the gift cards for those lucky winners. I can see we're ticking up in terms of the audience. Jason, just before we officially jump in, I will give you the formal introduction. I know that you'd prefer just to jump in, but we are really pleased from an Adbri Masonry perspective to be able to have multi-award winning landscaper Jason Hodges with over 30 years of experience in renovating and improving and designing gardens as a part of the wider Adbri team in his role of brand ambassador. And we've been lucky to work with Jason for over 10 years, having done a couple of these webinars in the past. Great feedback then, and we look forward to another good session today. Jason, I might pass to you now. How are you going, mate? Where do we find you from today?
I'm in beautiful sunny Sydney in a suburb called Alexandria. It's about 28 degrees today, and it feels like summer has officially started. Yesterday was the first time I swam in the ocean. There was sightings of whales, but I'll ignore that. But it was very refreshing after a hard day working in the garden to go and jump in the ocean at Gerringong it was. And I'm looking forward to doing that again this afternoon and then getting stuck into my garden tomorrow. So it's exciting to be here. I know we had some success when we've done these before during COVID. So it'll be interesting to see who can drag themselves in from the garden to actually sit down and listen to us for the next half an hour or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see the chat going already. So thank you everyone for participating. And Sue, certainly we're going to help with that question of looking for ideas of where to start. That's absolutely something that Jason's going to be able to talk us through today. I think I can still see a few people coming in, but I think we might get started formally, Jason, and the team that join us after that can just pick up on where we land. We might kick off officially into the first slide so we can have a look at what we're going to cover today and give everyone a bit of a sense of what they can expect from this session with yourself. Firstly, we are going to be looking at some projects. You know, Sue, you just mentioned in the chat, I can see some other comments there around where to start, ideas and inspirations. Jason's going to share some of his favorite before and afters just to set the scene and give us a sense of what is actually achievable when we do unlock the hidden value of our backyard. The other thing that we're going to move into is the 5 top tips. And when we're talking about spending time, effort, energy, and of course money in the backyard, I do think it's a great ability for us to be able to reveal Jason's top tips, leveraging all of that experience he has to give us some of the hints and tips and, where practical, some of the shortcuts to help set us up for success. Same goes with the top 3 things to avoid. And Jason, I know we were talking a little earlier. You've seen lots of these, and we'll be able to share with the team some things that are common mistakes that we can avoid to help ensure the success of our project, DIY or otherwise, to make sure we're making the most of that backyard project. And lucky last, we will draw the prizes for the 5 winners. So stay tuned and we'll get to that. I guess just as a start, let's have a look at a couple of landscaping projects to help set the scene. Before we get into those ones, sorry, Jace, I will get you just to ask, you've put a lot of time, effort, and energy into developing the 5 themes that you think really categorize good backyard design in 2024. And a lot of people on this call, we know, have actually gone onto the website, downloaded these, seen your free designs. Can you just maybe give us a brief overview of these 5 themes, and then we'll jump into it?
Yeah, just because we all like being in the outdoors, it doesn't mean we're dead keen gardeners. Like, if you're an entertainer and you want to have people over every weekend, well, that's taking away the time that you'd actually be pruning and shaping and mowing and all that sort of stuff. So designing a garden that suits your lifestyle or improves your lifestyle is what you want to aim for. So we've gone with 5. We've changed them a little bit. We were Hamptons there for a few years. Country Luxe and Coastal would still have elements that are very similar to the Hampton style. We've got the Entertainer. We've got the Resort style, which is just in a continuation of like that Balinese or Asian resort style. And we've got Urban Chic, which is like your courtyard, your little patio, that sort of space. And we've covered it from large areas, say Country Luxe, where you've got rolling lawns and big entertaining areas, to the Urban Chic, where you might be talking about a 5x5 space. So there's something there for everyone. You can download them for free, and they are a really good library or a guide for you to get inspiration for your place.
Excellent. So for those who haven't, I would encourage you to jump on and download those. There are a lot of good ideas, and Jason has actually sketched out some really good inspirational designs for us to leverage. Okay, let's jump straight into unlocking the hidden value of our backyard. We mentioned we'd share, Jason, and if you wouldn't mind providing some commentary on some of your favorite backyard projects. And just before I pass over, while I am from Adbri Masonry and we are sponsoring the show today, please be aware that we're covering all of the backyard. This isn't going to be 30 minutes of paving. And Jason, I know that you'll do a great job of including all of your tips on planting out and gardening as well, so that we can really make the most of the space. But Jason, maybe talk to us about this project we can see on the screen.
Yeah, well, this is a classic example of unlocking that hidden value. And I'm glad you mentioned that we're not just going to talk about pavers for 30 minutes because people and I would switch off. But the patio and the steppers here have turned an absolute wasteland where this property was blessed that the next door neighbours weren't a metre or 2 away, and it was the width of a driveway down both sides. So the shed's there for practical reasons. You can see the far fence hasn't changed. All that's changed is the stepping stones draw your eye from the backyard around to now what we've created in a courtyard. So on the floor there, we've got 600 by 400. I think they're the Euro stone pavers. They might even be the shot blast ones. They're my favourite by far. They've got the texture because they've been shot blasted. They're very good underfoot and they feel nice and you won't slip on them. And because they're steppers, that is probably the easiest DIY job I can think of. You can lay them individually on a couple of blobs of mud. I just wet the back of the paver. And then when I say mud, I mean mortar, which is sand and cement. So you're looking there, you've got about 12 steppers. So if you broke that down to square meters, there's about 2.5 square meters in pavers there. It's not a huge investment. And then you've created this patio or courtyard around the side. And I know when the budget lends to a little bit further, they're going to put a screening hedge in to hide that fence. But for a few $1,000s, you've turned something that looks like where you might hide the dog when you've got your friends over to somewhere where you really would like to go and catch the morning sun and have your brekkie or read the paper, take the phone call away from the family. You've created another destination in your garden. And on the ground there, you've just got simple plants like star jasmine in the tricolour. So rather than just being the green one with the white flower, the new growth is cream and red. So it's called tri because there's cream, red and green in it. And then on the right-hand side of the steppers, I think we've planted some lomandras. So they'll grow up and fill up that space and there'll be next to no gardening there. And then where the shed is, we put port wine magnolias and they'll get to the height of the shed and you'll prune them about once a year. And the foliage that you can see just coming in on the left-hand side of the photo is an ornamental pear called Capital. And I really like capitals because they kind of grow like a water droplet. So at the bottom, they might be about 2 meters deep and then they just go up to a nice point. And I planted them along my driveway in North Ryde and I had that property for 10 years and I never had to prune them or take a branch off them that wasn't in that perfect sort of water droplet shape. And so I reckon they're a fantastic plant for people who aren't fastidious gardeners, because you plant them and they just grow to shape and you never prune them. So apart from this being a really nice usable space, something visual to look at, as far as maintenance go, it is way, way down. So that's a nice sort of extra added catch for someone who wants to entertain but doesn't really want to be a gardener, but they like gardens.
Yeah, I know the homeowners really appreciated that maintenance piece. And what about this next one we're going to have a look at? Maybe if you could share some brief thoughts as to the renovation here. Scale was obviously bigger. How did we approach this one?
This was a garden we did in Canberra, and the lady of the house was a fair age and she had grandchildren, and we just wanted to get them away from the house and into the garden. So we've paved that circular courtyard in the middle of a new lawn. We replaced the lawn out, and those two trees at the front there are magnolia teddy bears. They'll get to about 5 meters, and you'll actually sort of walk underneath the canopy of the two to get to it. And again, we planted the rest of the place out with native grasses, but we gave them a destination in the garden, and we've also built in a raised garden bed. So that patio would make a fantastic stage for the grandkids to, do mucking around and show off to the grandparents. But also you put a fire pit in there and use it in the cooler months in Canberra. And it's a reason to get out into the backyard rather than just be on the edge of the house and looking at a large lawn that she didn't need for her age. We reduced the size of the lawn by about half, but we probably raised the amount of times you'd use the lawn because we'd pushed you out into the garden.
Yeah, very practical. And the third and the last one we have a look at before we get you to reveal your top tips is this one here.
Yeah, so we used VersaWall, which is the raised garden bed there you can see on the left-hand side. And what I really like about it is it's modular. So it goes into place and it's got bumps on the top of it. And it's a bit like that kids' bricks that we play with, that I'm not allowed to use the registered name, but it might sound a little bit like Pego. And it just goes together, and you don't need to get a bricklayer or a block layer in to lay it. You can go up to 800 mils high without engineering, and you can just fill it with like road base or blue metal. And if you wanted to go, say, as high as that fence, you could if you've got an engineer involved, and you'd use concrete and you'd use some Rio mesh. Now, the reason why we raised it there is, as you can see, the neighbours have got a probably 5 metre tall shed because the fence is 1.8 metres. So us going up 500 mil, we've improved the soil out of sight because we've got free draining soil full of nutrients in it. We've planted lily pillies that want to get to a maximum of about 5 metres. So raised garden bed, it means that 25 kids can sit along there when you're having Christmas breakfast or Christmas lunch or whatever. If they're waiting to bat next in cricket, they can sit on the fence. It also means the mower's not bashing into the hedge because the hedge is that far away from it. And the drainage that we've fixed up by putting it in there means those plants are going to grow faster. So that shed will disappear quicker. So it was a really simple job to do. That was me and a mate knocked that over in a day. It took, probably the most physical thing we did was put the blue metal in and the soil, but actually building the wall was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I think the one thing that stands out, which you've mentioned before, Jason, is those 3 backyards are all really diverse, from a small side of the house to a very expansive backyard, and maybe something here that is a little bit more textbook as an example. And, with your guidance on these 3, the homeowners have been able to significantly enhance their backyards. And if I think about the near 1,000 people that have downloaded the guides that you put together for how to improve your backyard, and a couple of hundred people have registered for today's webinar, I guess what we're hoping for is that you can give us the confidence that our backyards, which may be a little bit different than what we've seen, can experience a similar result. How do you encourage people to think that way?
Well, I like telling the story about a house that I bought that was next to a petrol station. It was the cheapest house in the suburb of Marrickville that I could find. When I walked to the back door, I could see the petrol station next door. And because I could see it, I could smell it. And because I could smell it, I could hear it. And all I could think about was the petrol station. And did I buy the right house? I planted a lily pilly hedge exactly like that one there that's hiding that shed. And within about 18 months, I couldn't see the petrol station. I could hardly hear it. I didn't smell it. And when I sold it, the petrol station didn't impact on the price of the house. And I doubled my money in about 4 years' time. So I always talk to people and say, real estate agents say that if you spend $1 well on your house, that you will get $2 back. But if you spend your money well in the garden, I think that it is priceless. You're not measuring it like doubling it or tripling it, because that hedge I put in was probably $500 worth of plants. And those $500 worth of plants turned a $400,000 house into nearly an $800,000 house. All I did was paint the rest of the place. I didn't replace the bathroom. I didn't replace the kitchen. Didn't replace the floorboards. Might have put a few new lights in. That's about it. And I built a garden. I'd go over the top and put in swimming pools and garages and all that. I just built a garden, a nice patio off the back. I used the Haven slabs, which are the 400 by 200s in charcoal. And the reason why I chose charcoal is because I'm messy and I drop things on the ground. And that dark color, it hides the mess. Where if I'd gone, sunstone or oatmeal or something like that, and I dropped something in like chocolate paddle pop or, glass of red wine on the pavers, I'd always be worrying about it. But with the charcoal, it doesn't matter. So I reckon if you spend $1 well in the garden, it could give you back $50 and $100. So that's my inspiration if I'm putting it down to finance. And then I think about lifestyle. I know that I'm so much happier inviting people around in my house when the lawn's looking on point, the hedges are done, pavers are clean, the furniture's out, the cushions are on them, and I just feel $1 million because they're my trophies. They're the things that I work for all week. So to have, they're the things that I desire. And I think that we underestimate, maybe COVID helped us a little bit to realize how important our, surroundings at home are, because it's a big part of our life. And I talk to people about garden lights and having sensor lights. And I think one of the biggest rewards is for people who put in a fair few hours during the week and you pull into your driveway and the lights go bing. I just think that's a little pat on the back going, you're going okay, your garden looks good. So I really like the financial justification of doing it for the garden. And I really like the improving my lifestyle and my family's lifestyle on the other hand. And if you can do those whole two things through life, you got a pretty good lifestyle, I reckon.
Absolutely. So you've given us some inspiration there. We've seen 3 different backyards. I'm taking from that, you believe we can all create something worthwhile in the backyard. Let's get straight into your tips then. You put 5 together, which are the must-dos, the 5 top tips for all of the people on the call and those who will watch later considering a garden. Let's jump straight into number 1, and that is the concept of designing and building your backyard to have year-round entertaining. Jason, what were you thinking here about this one?
Well, I think we as a country are the most blessed as far as climate goes. I mean, you go to Sweden in the middle of winter and it's, about 3 hours of sunshine, it's still icy cold. And you go to America in the middle of winter and it snows, and New Zealand's colder, and maybe Tassie gets a bit chilly in winter. But there's no reason that mainland Australia and even Tassie, with a few things put in place, that we can't be outside for a good chunk of the year. And your dollar can go further in the backyard than what it can in a lounge room or a kitchen. So I like the idea of garden lights. I mentioned that and started with that. But, your garden can look so much more sophisticated. You can highlight the things you want to. You can uplight your trees. You can hide the garbage bins. You don't put a light on the clothesline, those sorts of things. So you can make your garden look completely different at night. And it means you can use the space longer. Sensor lights are good just for coming in and home and for safety if you're walking to the back door. But mood lighting for your entertaining area and spotlighting through the garden to keep you outside longer is a really nice thing. And that could just be festoon lights that you buy off the shelf down at Bunnings, or it could be some low voltage lights that you put into the garden, and they've come down drastically in price over the years. And my other favourite one, and I always say it, is heating, and I'm talking about like a little campfire or a feature fire like that. And I think that, that's sort of nature's television, and you can stare at a fire on your own, you can stare at it with your partner and be romantic with your family, or even with a whole gathering. I went to a wedding last Saturday night, and I reckon 25 people stood around a fire pit and had a whale of a time. And there was gas heaters all through the other end parts of the wedding, but the people stood around the little fire pit. So I think those two things, lights and fire pits, can extend your period. And then if you've got the cash and you want to splash it around, a swimming pool in summer. So I just think diversity and choices. And I'm not talking about an all-weather sort of area. We're going to duck inside if the weather's really, really bad anyway. But, if it's just the cool of the evening, you can work with that and make it part of the charm.
Excellent. So heating and lighting as key considerations to make that outdoor space year round. Let's jump into the next one, which is, I know, a favourite of yours, and we can see your sketch on screen at the moment. What are the things that we need to think about in terms of planning it out and getting it right to start with?
Well, I'm glad I did that one in year 3. No, I'm joking. What I like about garden design is you don't have to be Paul Bangay. You don't have to be the greatest designer in the history of the world to get it right, but you just have to have what they call a mud plan. So that drawing there is a blunt mud plan. There's no dimensions. It might be the size of the garden, 10 by 6 or something like that I was working with, but I haven't drawn anything to scale. I'm just getting my ideas. And if you were to build a house, you wouldn't start at the front door and not know where you're finishing. Imagine saying, oh, yeah, we're just going to, oh, yeah, let's put another bedroom on. Oh, we'll put another bedroom on. Oh, we didn't build a laundry. Oh, we don't have a toilet. The kitchen, what about the kitchen? So you just wouldn't do it inside, and you'd go and get the professionals to do it for you, and you'd make sure it worked. Honestly, if you're doing something simple in your backyard or your courtyard, I think you can tackle it yourself. You just need to plan it out. So what I mean by that is get onto the internet, have a look at the brochures we've done, get inspiration. Probably my number one place for inspiration, if I'm doing it to justify the spend, is realestate.com and domain.com. And I look what they're doing in the suburb that I'm working in, or if it's my own property, because I don't want to underinvest and I don't want to overinvest, and I don't really want to stand out. I want to make sure that in the future someone wants to buy my property. So I'm not saying I want to be beige, but I do want to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's to justify the spend. Then I think about my lifestyle and my family, and I try and merge the two together. But undervaluing your property and your land and doing a budget job sometimes can backfire. And same as overspending and putting too much into it and not justifying it later on. And you've got to think about how you're going to use the space, how many features you need in it, what's going to draw you out into that yard, how are the kids going to use it, how's it going to function when I've got an extended family. So just ticking the boxes and planning it out. And it might take you a week of 1 hour a night just in front of the computer and looking for inspiration in your area or something that you've seen and sort of tracking it down over the net. But it's definitely worth having a mud plan. It doesn't have to be amazing, but if you're going to follow it or if you're going to hand it over to a landscaper, it definitely is like, at least you're comparing apples with apples if someone's going to start to give you a price for things.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I think Jason is, and hopefully it gives everyone some confidence that we don't need to be landscape designers. It is a case of sketching out what we want, and of course, thinking about what we're going to do. And I think your piece there around you would never do it inside is a great one.
I think one of the fun things to do is actually sit around as a family and ask what you want in the garden. And like, I can imagine the 10-year-old boy going, I want a bike track that I can do 360s. And I can imagine mum saying, I want every edible plant, every flower in the world. But honestly, like going, okay, where are we going to put the bins? Where are we going to put the clothesline? How does that work? What door do we come out of from the laundry? All those sorts of things. Okay, kids, yes, you do have a trampoline. We need to put that in the garden. Okay, you're 9. You're probably going to use it until you go to high school. Maybe we mulch underneath the trampoline for now. And then when we retire the trampoline, we turn that area into a veggie patch. That's sort of having future planning. And the other one is, if you are thinking about building sheds or garages or pools in the future, try to allow access, even though you're starting to build your garden. Just try to make sure that you might be able to get a bobcat or a digger or something through and not blocking it off.
Great advice. Let's jump into number 3. And I know this is one that you think about all the time. You're a very big advocate for DIYing, and hundreds of clips and videos that the Adbright team have put together with you front and center. Talk to us about this tip here of DIYing to our capacity.
I always say, lots of people ask me about veggie gardens. They go, oh, we want to build a veggie garden. We want to do 15 meters by 10 meters. And I go, okay, can you do me a favor before you hate me? Can you just go and do a herb garden about 2 meters by 1 meter? And they go, what? And I've gone, Because a herb garden where you put in rosemary and basil and mint and lemongrass needs about 5 minutes attention, maybe twice a week. But a veggie garden needs 5 minutes attention, probably morning and night, 7 days a week. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're putting kids in the school car and getting them to the bus stop, and you got to get to that first meeting of the day, and then you're working late and you got to take them to school sport, and it's someone's birthday, and you're going away for the weekend with the neighbors and all that sort of stuff. Knowing your actual capabilities of time that you can dedicate to something and what you dream about doing, they're different. So DIY to your capacity, someone might say, oh, I'm going to pave the backyard. Okay, mate, go and start by paving the 2 square meters where your garbage bins are, because it's only going to cost you a couple of $100 in materials. You build up your confidence. You either go, oh, I can't do that. I need to save the money to get the professionals in to do the rest. And I've saved you the heartache of tackling that big job that you don't finish. Or you go, I did my 2 meters. The water drains off. The bins are sitting where they're meant to be. I really enjoyed it. When I've got my week off work for holidays, I'm going to tackle the patio. Or I'm going to do that side path. And there's no perfect time to do it. I'd say spring's about the best time to work, because it's not too cold and it's not too hot and it's just right, like the 3 little bears. But, you know, the days are decently long and you're not going to bust your boiler because it's not 30 or 40 degrees. So spring and autumn are nice times to work in the garden. But just knowing your capabilities, I always say if you can lift it, you can lay it. But that's a little bit of an extreme. I think you need to have patience and you need to sort of understand the steps. Because if we look at these concrete sleepers that we've used here as the garden bed, the actual easiest part of that job is putting them in place and getting them level. The hardest thing is marking it out, making sure it's all square, then digging out the existing lawn down 100 mil. That's the most physical part. And then getting the pavers near the lawn, putting some mortar on the ground, and then laying them and getting them level. So the hardest grunt part of that job is the digging out and going backwards. And that's where a lot of people lose their enthusiasm. It's the same with paving. It's the excavating, bringing in the road base, leveling that off, bringing the sand in, leveling that off, and then all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You go, but I've just leveled the sand. I can't leave it now, otherwise it'll be ruined by the next time I lay them. So understanding the steps and how long they take, and you do have to crack a few eggs to make an omelette, and you do go backwards before you go forwards.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. And for those that are interested in DIYing a project and following some of Jason's advice there of starting small, maybe some practice under the bins or with a garden edge, jump onto the Adbri Masonry website or YouTube and look for some of the videos that Jason's put together to help build that confidence. Jason, we might promptly go through the next couple so we can spend some time thinking about the 3 things to avoid. So this one I know that you're really passionate about, and you know, we talked about it earlier, the greenery really brings the space to life. What is your top tip here thinking about planting out?
Well, I think this is a good example of how you can get a completely different look just by the plants that we're putting. So we've got the Eurostone there, the 600 by 400s, like I said, my favourite paver. We've also got on the right-hand side a raised pier, and we're building a chair. But then this garden's quite tropical. We've got lily pillies and palms. There's a maple to the left-hand side, all screening off the neighbours, just showing that you don't have to have like the one hedge plant to screen off the neighbours. And then on the floor, it's kind of like an Asian garden. We've got some Grange. We've got some zoysia grass over the white mounds, some buxus balls there on the next mound, and some lirio, which is a Japanese plant. So we've got an Asian infusion. You go and change that, plant conifers or plant native grasses, and you can get exactly the same working ethics of the garden, but a completely different look. One of the little things that I like about this garden, it's just a subtle thing, but in the right-hand side there where you've got the pier, you've got the grass coming up to the face of the pier, then you've got the black mulch coming up to that, and then just to soften that point, there's some lirio, and it just really draws my eye to it. And it's just it's not uniform, but it's just subtle enough. It softens the big pier, and it marries all the materials together. So just having an eye for detail. Everyone's got a camera on their phone these days, and I could show you my phone. I'm driving here today. I took a photo of a building. I pulled up to take the photo, where a plant called ficus had totally grown over the wall of the building. It could have been the ugliest building in the world, but it was fluoro green because the hedge had stuck on the wall of the building and all up underneath the veranda. So what could have started as a $2 or $3 plant has completely changed the look of that building. And, you know, you get your inspiration where you see it. So that walk around with your camera and your phone and use it.
And Jason, I was just going to ask that point, because there's, you know, a number of plants here that you've rattled off the names of, and there's others that people will like. How do you recommend finding the ones that are best for a garden?
Again, realestate.com, looking at what's in your neighborhood, because, you know, if it works at your neighbors, you know it'll work at your house. Well, when I'm landscape designing for people at home, I usually say, can you show me the worst house in the street? And they get a little bit confused by it, but the worst house in the street, usually the garden's not looked after. And so if there's something like a frangipani there, or a strelitzia, which is bird of paradise, or liriope or lamandra, or the lawn still looks pretty good, you go, okay, well, I know that frangipanis do really well in your street, and strelitzia does really well in your street. So if they're doing it there where they get no fertilizer, no pruning, and no love, they're going to love it at your place. So looking for inspiration from the worst house, but then also looking for the house that got the record price in your street or your neighborhood. Just picking a palette. Don't go for every feature plant under the sun. You don't have a lounge room with a feature wall of red, blue, yellow, and green. You'd look like the Wiggles, you know. So you don't have to have every plant from every country in the world in your garden. I like mass planting things, as you can see in this photo here. There's lamandra all around that mound, and then the grass will eventually join up over the white pebbles. So we only introduced about 3 or 4 plants. The ones in the background were already there. But you don't have to have 50 different plants in your garden. You can settle for 3 or 4.
Great advice. Thank you. And on to the last one before we get into the tips to avoid. Now, this is, you sort of touched on this, and maybe you can sum it all up together for us, Jason, thinking about the petrol example, the realestate.com, and the best and worst house in the street. You know, many of us on the call will be looking to unlock that space in our houses from a lifestyle perspective, but how does the adding value to the home piece thread in here?
I just think that it's a no-brainer. You wouldn't go and buy a car if you knew it was going to depreciate overnight to nothing. You wouldn't go and buy a house if you knew it wasn't good investment. You know, we do some things for emotional reasons, like I just had a wonderful lunch that made me feel fantastic, but I didn't really need it. But if you can put a financial add-on to improving your lifestyle, I think that it's fundamentally a success story on many fronts. So adding value to your property is a no-brainer to me. You know, the lifestyle thing is the reason you do it, but the compounding money that you can make by improving your block of land, and I end up thinking that I end up saving money, because when my garden's looking on point or looking good, we go out less because we entertain at home more, and it's a heaps cheaper. And there's no one to tap you on the shoulder and say you've had too many, and you don't have to worry about getting a taxi home. So I think entertaining at home is a no-brainer. And it's kind of like a little bit of bragging, a little bit of showing off. And like I said before, it's a pat on the back for all the hard work we do. So.
And Jason, you always say, over the time that we've worked together, you're often saying to me and to others and on the videos that, you know, landscaping is one of those things, and you mentioned depreciating of a car. It gets better the day after it goes 100%, in.
100%. Like, your bathroom is only as good as the day you use it. Your kitchen can't get any bigger or grow better, and it's only as good as the day before you use it. Where a garden, like I was saying about that hedge, if I look at this photo here and you can see the dark fence in the background, and there's a bit of a ramshackle old house over the corner. Now, if Mrs. Mangle's standing there every day staring straight in, it's going to scare off a few potential buyers in the future. But you put a lily pilly or a conifer or a camellia or a viburnum morea, put a hedge in there and get it up to the height of her gutters, and all of a sudden you don't see Mrs. Mangle anymore. That's priceless. You know, A, you've got your backyard back and you've got your privacy and you want to feel very secure in your own backyard. And B, financially, you know, your backyard's an oasis and someone's going to pay more for it rather than looking at that old house. So it's a no-brainer to me. And like I said, you can grow your garden into more money. You can buy small plants and grow them big. In fact, it's better horticulturally to buy something small and grow it in place than to buy the big stuff like you see on the TV shows and the block and things like that. So it's more practical to buy small, get the plant established, the root system will be heaps stronger, the plant will grow faster and last longer.
Yeah, excellent. So well said. And I think, I'm buying a place at the moment, and every image that pops up on realestate.com.au is the entertaining area. It seems to be the number one thing they lead with, and certainly with a young family, the number one thing that we're looking for. So thank you for that. That's what we can do. What should we avoid? And if you can, Jason, let's try and spend just a couple of minutes each on these, and the Adbri team will put together a one-pager on the 3 things to avoid, and we'll make sure we send it to everyone on this call. But give us a good sense, Jason, of what you've just seen time and time again, where unfortunately as DIYers, we tend to get it wrong.
Yeah, so the first one's scale and how it fits your property. So like if you've got a Federation home, do you really want to have highly polished concrete and minimalist materials around the place and pay really high-end prices for them? And vice versa, if you've got an architecturally designed home, do you really want to be using second-hand bricks and cobblestones? So you need to work your style of your garden into the structure that you live in, the home that you live in, and you either complement it or you contrast it completely. And then scale, I think that's really important. There's nothing worse than sitting in a space going, I feel awkward because it's too big. So you can do too big an outdoor entertaining area where you feel like you're the only person in a food hall. And you've spent way too much money because you've made it so big, but then it's not intimate. So making spaces, making different rooms, that's what I like about the fire pit. You can sit around a fire pit on your own and you can solve your own problems and sort of, it's nature's television, so you can stare off into it and not feel awkward that there's nothing happening. But then it's a talking point if you're with your partner or with a couple of friends, and, it's the center of the party if you've got 20 or 30 people there. So making sure you've got scale, I think is really important, because you can overspend and you don't necessarily need to, and it can backfire on you and it can feel sort of unhomely. It'll look like a garden design rather than a garden. And you want to build something that feels like an extension of your lifestyle rather than you shouldn't be out there.
Makes perfect sense and directly related to your point on planning, Jason. That's the type of thing we'd avoid. What about this second one? It's essentially skimping on time. What is the importance of getting these things right, like the foundation, to have made your list of the things to completely avoid?
Well, the foundation starts with that plan we were talking about, but then there's the grunt work. So for paving and for our walls, you need to have a decent footing or foundation for them. And unfortunately, as a landscaper, it's really hard to compare people's apples and apples or oranges and oranges, because you can only look at the icing on the cake, which is the paver. And it'd be like judging a mechanic from only looking at the bonnet of the car when it's down. So I could build you a house with no foundations. You could walk in the front door today and you go, this is beautiful. And then next week the door sticks, and a week after the window cracks, and all of a sudden the drains are falling the wrong way and the house will crumble because there's no foundations. And it's the same with paving and with retaining walls. It's really easy to skip the steps because you never see it again and lay the pavers just on a bit of sand over some dead grass or something like that. The grass is going to decompose, the sand's going to sink, your pavers are going to swim. So getting a firm footing, like digging down to something that's nice and solid. And if you're working on a slope, raising up level or to the fall that you want with a road base that you can pact, but you don't raise it up like evenly, you raise it up to close to the finish height, and then you have a thin layer of sand that's even, and then you lay your pavers on top. So it's in our brochures and it's in our guides, but it's just something that, because it is it's the muscle work of the job and it's time consuming. People get nervous that they're never going to finish and they hurry up and speed that bit up. But just trust me that you get through it, and then the actual screeding the sand and paving is really enjoyable and quite relatively quick compared to that digging out, bringing in the road base, getting the footings right. So just be patient and don't skimp on it, and you will really thank yourself for it when the paving's looking good in 20 and 30 years' time.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason. And just before we finish off with the next one, which I know you have touched on, so you might put a bow in it for us. If anyone has any specific questions, please do drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to a couple, but we will certainly circulate questions and answers for all of the ones that you put into the chat, and we'll work with Jason to get those answers. So Jason, can you just finish off this last piece here on maintenance? And then we will maybe get Cara from Adbri to drop the winners in and go to a couple of the audience questions.
I like how Tony's written, hitting your thumb with the mallet. That should be in the mistakes to avoid section. It goes without saying, Tony. I actually don't have any bruised nails at the moment. I'm going all right. But usually I'm missing a nail or something like that. The last one is high maintenance, or it's a little bit similar to under-investing in your garden or over-investing in your garden. Don't get your ambitions mixed up with your capabilities. I want a veggie garden, let's start with a herb patch. And people put in these hedges that, we're just going to keep it to 3 meters. Keeping a hedge to 3 meters means you're on a step ladder probably 2 or 3 times a year, and you should never be on a ladder hedging. It's just not a good place to be. So getting it right where you go, actually, I only need the hedge at 1.5 meters and I can't see the road or I can't see my neighbor. So I can plant a different tree or a different shrub. And just having all those things in place, appreciating that photo there's got a pool in it, understand that a pool's going to cost you, $100 to $150 a month to run and to put some chemicals in it. Those sorts of things, people might not think about the long-term costs or I'll just get a gardener in. Well, a gardener these days starts at about $60 an hour and goes up to $100. So, just getting a gardener in. So if you can build a garden that you enjoy looking after because you planted it right and it's easy to maintain, I think is a far smarter way to go than, up on ladders and pruning and doing things above your head and working really hard. You want to enjoy your garden, not enjoy spending money on it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. And when you touched on it before about how many times you might need to be out there, just thinking about your appetite for maintenance in advance is always good advice.
And it's always easier to add things to your garden if you are getting bored. And I did get bored in the garden that I had once, and I kept adding to it until I got it right. But taking things out is a lot harder and it's wasteful.
Okay, let's jump into some of the Q&As. And there's a few in the chat, but I know we've got a couple on screen that came through first from Wendy. How do we design a carport and garden to enhance the curb appeal of an older house? And Jason, we've got 5 of these and we are getting towards the end of the session. So maybe we'll...
Look, I reckon adding a carport and a driveway to a garden is a great way to do a makeover on a home because you're not actually transforming the whole facade of the place. You can really jazz up that carport. If you've got an existing carport and it's ugly, I'd grow something like star jasmine or ficus up the posts and beams of it. Like I was saying, I saw that driving here today. You could either follow the pitch of the roof of the house and extend the carport into the house or build something that contrasts it. And jazzing up a garden, well, it could be as simple as just adding a few architectural plants or, just having a look at what the neighbours have done and see how you can introduce that into your place. Excellent.
And the next question that we have here is from Margaret. What's some garden edging that doesn't let grass grow under? In this particular example for Margaret, a previous timber edge has failed.
Okay. So we've got our concrete sleepers there, and then we've got our Haven brick, which is the 200 by 100, and we've got our garden edge on the top right, which is kind of an L-shaped paver. With all 3 examples that you can see on the screen, the one thing that I would do differently is I would mortar in between the paver or the brick or the cement slabs because that's where the grass is going to grow through. It's not necessarily going to grow under and back up. It's going to grow through the joints of the pavers or the bricks. Regular whipper snipping will stop it. The photo on the left is Sir Walter. The photo on the right might be Kikuyu. Kikuyu is more invasive. If you've laid them on a mortar bed of about 50 mil, and then all 3 products are at least 50 mil, and the garden edge one on the top right goes up to 100 mil, Kikuyu or Buffalo wouldn't go down underneath the 100 mils, which is the paver and then the mortar. It wouldn't go under. It'll only go through those joints. So if you mortar the joints, you should solve the problem.
Excellent. And the third question of those that were pre-asked, and we will have time for a couple from the chat. In one of our manuals, it shows aggregates and no fines details for what is obviously going to be a larger retaining wall, Jason, thinking about no fines. Can we use steel bars and concrete as infill to make a wall higher? And I know you'll be thinking about, the difference between, say, a traditional Besser block retaining wall compared to the garden walls we're seeing on screen.
Yeah, so like Versa wall, the one there on the left, that's a cracker. It looks a little bit like an Egyptian tomb or the pyramids. There's retaining wall upon retaining wall, and that is a great way actually of doing it without having to get engineering or concreting. So they've gone up 700 mil there. You can see the bottom course is half in the ground, and each course is 200 mil. So they've gone up 700 mil plus the capping stone on top. So they're under the 800, and then they've tiered back and built their retaining wall over 4 surfaces. If you see bypasses and expressways, freeways, you'll see the same kind of brickwork, and it could be 4 or 5 meters high, but it's all engineered. So I'm not going to recommend that you do it above the 4 courses without getting an engineer. If you're a builder and you're sort of onto it and you know what you're doing, you're taking the responsibility. But everything that we say at Adbri is above 4 courses, 800 mil. You've got to get an engineer involved, but it definitely can be done. There's just a mathematical equation of how much steel and how much concrete you need.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point, Jason. There's often that local council will actually regulate the height we can go to, and as soon as it's a little bit higher, they're asking for that engineered detail. But I think, and Don, I'm not sure if you're on, but to just close that one out, the segmental dry stack retaining wall, like the ones you can see on the screen, that is not for Rio bars and concrete infill isn't necessary, but a traditional concrete Besser block, which Adbri also do produce, they're the ones that Jason's talking about that you can engineer with steel bars and concrete infill. So thank you for the question, Don. Hopefully that helped. And on to the next one.
And you can get Besser block or block work in rock face and in colours as well. Like, it doesn't have to be what you think of when you think of a Besser.
Yeah, or render and paint.
Yeah.
One here from Gary. Jason, specific recommendation, please, on feature pots for architectural feature plants. We've got a cracking issue here and disintegrating with some lightweight composite pots. What's the advice here, mate?
That surprised me because I've actually, over the last couple of years, gone to fiberglass and things like that, just for ease of moving them around in my vehicles, moving around on the property, and the fact that they're harder to break. So to hear that they've broken and that they were sort of sun sensitive or something like that really surprises me. What I do recommend is always look for pots that are wider at the top than they are at the bottom, and not these things that are shaped like Turkish water baths and, unusual shapes where you can't actually get the plant out once the root balls grow. So, your traditional terracotta pot is wider at the top than it is at the bottom, and you can get the whole root ball out. All those pots there in that photo would be quite difficult to get plants out and repot them without breaking the pot. So that would be my one tip if you don't want to waste the pot and reuse it, because rule of thumb is you should be taking in your potted plants out of a pot every sort of 18 months, 2 years, dunking them in a garbage bin, pruning the roots, putting new potting mix around them and feeding them, and you'll be surprised how much your plants will love it. So giving them a little tip prune, fertilizing them, replacing the soil. But yeah, I still lean towards the fiberglass and the new sort of sun stabilized plastics just for the ease of it. But you can't beat sort of classic terracotta. That's the truth.
Yeah. A couple of rapid fire ones, Jason, then we are done with the questions. There's a couple here from Stephen, the natural impressions retaining wall. Then I think I'm going to go to one in the chat from Sam and Julie. What about this one here from Stephen? What's the best way to cut a concrete brick? I think probably the cap question part 2, that would be easier to send a guide, but maybe can you help Stephen with the first bit?
Yeah, look, a wet saw or a brick saw is the way to go. Brick saw means that you're standing up and you're quite comfortable and you can, make sure you got your eye protection, ear protection and plenty of water suppressing the dust. I know a trick that some DIYers do is they use an angle grinder and a bottle of, like a 2-litre bottle of Coke with a nail hole in the bottom. But I honestly don't recommend that, because you're bringing a second person into the position of where you're cutting. And it just means that there's a second person that can get injured. But hiring a brick saw or hiring a wet saw. So a wet saw is, standalone, you cut it on the ground, but a brick saw is definitely the safest way to go. You'd hire one from Kennards or one of the hire mobs for $100 a day, and you knock over all your cuts in one go.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to go to one now from Sam. I think, unless there's another on the screen.
I'll just give you a little tip about gluing down the caps.
Yep.
So you can get landscapers liquid nails. It goes off faster than your standard liquid nails. I like to put them out dry, make sure that it all looks really good, and then just one at a time, I flip it over, 2 big blobs, put the capping stone back down, and then get it into contact and get it to where you want it. And then I lift it up about 100 mil and I put it back down. And by lifting it up and getting all those sort of the tension from one end of the blob to the other, you've added all this extra oxygen in there, and they'll take a lot quicker and it'll bond a lot tighter. So put it in place, lift it up and put it back down. And I don't know the chemical reaction that happens, but it does make it, A, take quicker, and B, it takes a lot tighter.
Thank you. And a couple of rapid fire to finish. And Cara, I might ask if you want to pop the names of the winners into the chat in just a moment. Jason, I'll get you to read those out momentarily. Sam had a question: irrigation system versus a general hose. In your opinion, Jason, worth the expense or no?
I really like irrigation that you can see compared to the dripper system that's underneath your lawn or underneath your garden that you can't see because you don't know whether you're watering or not. I still like having the little risers and the water splashing around the garden. Yes, you have a little bit more evaporation, but I believe that I use less water because I can see the gardens getting watered. So if I had the funds, I'd definitely recommend having irrigation. Might put a few pop-ups in the lawn, but irrigating the garden. And then you can say, okay, well, over here is my dry area. I actually don't need to water that as much, and you can move the heads away. Where if you've got a dripper system where there's little holes in the brown hose every 100 mil, it's pretty hard to water one place less than another.
Excellent. And lastly here from Julie, and thank you, Cara, for letting everyone know we will share the Q&As via email this week. The question from Julie, Jason, is what are your top tips for relocating plants?
Well, I do this on a daily basis. So I irrigate heavily a day or two beforehand, or if not both days beforehand. And I just find that softens the soil enough that I can dig my plants out easily. If something is a decent size, like if I wanted to move, say, a 2 or 3 meter camellia or magnolia or something like that, I'd actually trench sort of, 500 mil off the trunk line the whole way around, dig a trench about this much, and I would flood that as often as I could. So as I'm making breakfast in the morning, I'd go down and fill that moat with water. And then if I could get home at lunchtime, I'd fill that moat with water. And then if I could do it that evening, I'd fill that moat with water. And then in a couple of days, I'd find it really easy that I could get underneath. Now, professionally, you try and do this over, say, 12 months. You'd build that moat, fill it with sand, flood it, get the new growth to go into the sand. So when you plant it, you've got all this new growth on the end. Reality is, as a landscaper, you're moving something today because you want to put it somewhere tomorrow. So I like digging that moat and filling it up for a day or two. And I find that it makes the soil nice and soft and I can get underneath it. And then when you put it in the other spot, just treat it like a new lawn and water it 2 or 3 times a day because you've hacked at the root system.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Jason. Okay, I think we are on to the last one there. And the theme of this has been unlocking the hidden value of your home this spring. Jason mentioned the best time to take on a residential landscaping project. And we are going to be helping 5 lucky winners get a little bit further ahead with their backyard renovation project. And Cara, I'm going to ask that you pop the names into the chat. Jason, you can do the honors and read out the winners.
All right.
And then I might get you following that to just to do a wrap up, certainly before we do that, from Adbri Masonry's perspective, thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you have found it informative. And if you are looking at kickstarting your project, either as one of the lucky winners or otherwise, jump onto the adbrimasonry.com.au website or Google Adbri Masonry to find loads more content and information from Jason to help make your project a success. And for those looking to tackle it before Christmas, definitely time to get started. Jason, the winners, please.
We have, for the gift cards, there is 5 gift cards to give away. We've got Yvonne G, Taylor M, Anatoly B, Essie J, and Gabrielle M. So we'll get in contact with all of you straight after this.
And for the grand prize.
The landscape, I don't know if it's that grand, mate. It's only a garden designed by me. It's not, I'd prefer the gift card, really. It goes to Michael R. So we'll get in contact with all of those people in the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes after this is finished. But congratulations. I'd just like to say thanks for giving up some of your Saturday afternoon to listen to me waffle. I know that gardening is addictive, and I know to some people it's scary, but you got to start somewhere. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. And I really like the fact that Adbri are investing in sort of encouraging DIYers and beginners to having a crack. And by no means are their product entry level, but you got to start somewhere. And I think that, you can get amazing looks with their materials. And I've used an anywhere from my own backyard to the Melbourne Garden Show where I've won gold medals. And I just think that their products stand the test of time. So get the inspiration from the website. If we can help you out at any of our showrooms across the country, that's awesome. But more importantly, just have fun and have a crack and enjoy your garden.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.